Oh, no. We got to get into the breakdown, but we got to get into the Clark show, baby. Caitlin Clark put Alicia Gray on skates behind the back, step back three, the best show in the business. Take a look. Ooh.
Oh, sidestep Clark. Set.
That's a Clark show, man. There's nobody in the league that can bring this excitement. Look at this.
Oh, sidestep Clark. Set.
The story surrounding Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese keeps changing, but the ending keeps looking remarkably familiar. Every time the spotlight gets brightest, every time the conversation becomes bigger than basketball, Caitlin Clark finds a way to seize control of the narrative. Against Atlanta, Caitlin Clark didn't deliver her most efficient shooting night. She didn't fill the box score with 30 points. She didn't need to. What made this performance so important was the way Caitlin Clark dictated the game even when her jumper wasn't falling. That's the difference between a star and a franchise centerpiece. Meanwhile, Angel Reese entered another nationally discussed matchup carrying expectations, pressure, and the weight of a rivalry that continues to generate headlines. But while Angel Reese battled on the glass and fought for rebounds, Caitlin Clark controlled the pace, controlled the flow, and ultimately controlled the outcome. The bigger story, however, may not be Angel Reese at all. The bigger story may be the growing tension between what Caitlin Clark is capable of offensively and what Stephanie White's system is allowing fans to see. Every spectacular pass from Caitlin Clark creates another question. Every deep three creates another debate. Every possession that slows down creates another criticism directed at Stephanie White. Because when people watch Caitlin Clark, they expect fireworks. When people watch Indiana Fever basketball, they expect an offense built around maximizing one of the most unique offensive talents the sport has ever seen. Instead, many fans are beginning to wonder whether Stephanie White's approach is limiting what should be the most exciting offense in the WNBA. And after another victory over Angel Reese, those questions are becoming impossible to ignore.
2 for 9. That ain't gonna get it done. The big three for the Indiana Fever played much, much better. Now, I will start with Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark had a good overall floor game, but did not shoot the basketball well. We need her to shoot it much better. 6 of 17 from the floor, 2 of 8 from 3. Not good enough. That's not gonna be good enough. She did finish the game with 17 points, 8 assists, and 7 rebounds. And that is what separates Caitlin Clark from every other guard in this league. When they're not making...
The most fascinating part of this game is that Caitlin Clark didn't need an elite shooting performance to completely impact the result. On paper, the shooting numbers weren't dominant. 6 for 17 isn't the standard that Caitlin Clark sets for herself. 2 three-pointers isn't the explosive barrage fans have become accustomed to seeing. Yet somehow Caitlin Clark still finished with 17 points, 8 assists, and 7 rebounds. That's where the separation begins. When defenses focus entirely on Caitlin Clark, she adapts. When defenders chase her off screens, Caitlin Clark becomes a passer. When shots aren't falling, Caitlin Clark attacks the glass. When lanes collapse, Caitlin Clark creates opportunities for teammates. That versatility is what helped Indiana overwhelm Atlanta's stars. While Angel Reese recorded a double-double, the overall impact favored Indiana's core. Caitlin Clark, Kelsey Mitchell, and Aaliyah Boston consistently generated better offensive possessions than Atlanta's leading players. The third quarter became a perfect example. Caitlin Clark helped establish momentum early. Defenders were forced to respect her range. Passing lanes opened. Rotations became slower. Suddenly, Kelsey Mitchell found space to attack. Once Kelsey Mitchell caught fire, Atlanta's defense faced an impossible decision. Stay attached to Caitlin Clark and allow Kelsey Mitchell room to operate. Shift attention toward Kelsey Mitchell and allow Caitlin Clark to orchestrate. That is the gravity effect that only a handful of basketball players possess. Meanwhile, Angel Reese was forced into a different role. Rather than dictating offense, Angel Reese spent much of the game reacting to what Indiana was doing. The result wasn't disastrous for Angel Reese, but it wasn't enough to alter the outcome. And that's becoming a recurring theme. The conversation surrounding Angel Reese often centers on effort, rebounding, and physicality. The conversation surrounding Caitlin Clark centers on control of defenses, control of tempo, control of attention. Those are 2 very different levels of influence. By the end of the night, the scoreboard reflected that difference. Indiana earned a critical victory. Caitlin Clark added another chapter to her growing resume, and Angel Reese once again found herself on the wrong side of the final result.
To play much better. I'm gonna be honest with you. They're going to need to play much better on Saturday versus the New York Liberty. I still don't like the way this offense looks. I still don't like Stephanie White. None of that's changed. I will give Stephanie White credit today. I know a lot of people, KTV giving Stephanie White credit. Yes, you said you were stubborn and you got outside of yourself. You didn't sub Caitlin Clark out in the first 3.5 minutes of the game.
This is where the story shifts from players to coaching, because even after a victory, criticism of Stephanie White didn't disappear. In many ways, it intensified. Fans watch Caitlin Clark make a behind-the-back move that sends defenders scrambling. They watch Caitlin Clark launch shots from distances most players wouldn't even consider. They watch Caitlin Clark throw passes that transform ordinary possessions into highlight reels. Then they watch stretches where the offense slows to a crawl. That contrast is fueling the debate. Historically, transcendent guards have always forced coaches to make difficult choices. Do you impose structure, or do you unleash creativity? The greatest offensive systems often find a balance between the two. When Caitlin Clark plays freely, Indiana looks dangerous. When Indiana becomes overly deliberate, fans immediately notice. That's why discussions about Stephanie White continue to dominate conversations after wins and losses alike. To her credit, adjustments were visible. Defensive coverages changed, rotations changed. There appeared to be greater flexibility compared to previous performances, but the offensive concerns remain. The criticism isn't necessarily about effort. It isn't necessarily about preparation. The criticism is about ceiling. How high can the Indiana Fever climb if Caitlin Clark is fully unleashed? And how much of that ceiling is being left untouched? Those questions become even more important when examining Angel Reese's situation. Teams facing Angel Reese generally know what is coming. Physical play, rebounding pressure, interior activity. Teams facing Caitlin Clark face uncertainty. The defense has to account for low-range shooting. The defense has to account for elite passing. The defense has to account for off-ball movement. The defense has to account for transition attacks. That unpredictability is a weapon. Many observers believe Stephanie White should be building every offensive principle around maximizing that weapon. Whether fair or unfair, every offensive stagnation is now being measured against what fans believe Caitlin Clark could be producing. And every spectacular highlight creates even more evidence for that argument.
I mean, a lot of times, we're not going to get, it is what it is. We're not going to get the typical Clark show that we're used to seeing as long as Stephanie White is at the helm. And I'm going to keep it real with you. That's just what it is. Do I want this Indiana Fever team? Like, I want Caitlin Clark to win. I want Caitlin Clark to do well. She's my favorite player in the sport to watch, man or woman, honestly. And, but I really don't want to see Stephanie White stick around, truthfully. But I could stomach Stephanie White getting some credit for.
The long-term implications extend far beyond a single regular season win. This is about the future of the franchise. Caitlin Clark isn't just Indiana's best player. Caitlin Clark is the face of the organization. Every ticket sold, every national television appearance, every surge of attention eventually circles back to Caitlin Clark. That reality creates pressure. Pressure on coaches, pressure on executives, pressure on teammates, pressure on everyone connected to the franchise. When Caitlin Clark succeeds, expectations rise. When Caitlin Clark struggles, every decision is examined. And when Caitlin Clark wins while appearing underutilized, the scrutiny becomes even stronger. That's exactly where Stephanie White finds herself. The victory over Atlanta temporarily quiets concerns because winning solves many problems, but it doesn't eliminate the underlying questions. Can this offense become elite? Can Stephanie White unlock another level from Caitlin Clark? Can Indiana maximize the partnership between Caitlin Clark, Kelsey Mitchell, and Aaliyah Boston? Those questions will define the season. Meanwhile, the rivalry narrative continues to fade. Every sports league searches for defining rivalries. The league benefits when Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese are discussed together. The attention is enormous. The engagement is massive, but rivalries require competitive balance. At some point, results begin shaping perception. And right now, Caitlin Clark continues stacking victories while Angel Reese continues searching for answers. That doesn't diminish Angel Reese's talent. It doesn't diminish Angel Reese's impact as a rebounder. It simply reflects where both players currently stand in their professional journeys. One player is increasingly defining games through offensive control. The other is still trying to expand her influence beyond rebounding and effort plays. For Indiana, the path forward is clear. Continue building around Caitlin Clark. Continue empowering Caitlin Clark. Continue searching for ways to transform flashes of brilliance into a consistently dominant offensive machine. Because if that happens, the Fever won't just beat teams like Atlanta. They'll become a legitimate championship threat.